So we're going to talk a little bit about Megillas Esther. And the idea about Megillas Esther that we spoke about on Monday is something I want to revisit for a few moments and then strengthen it. That what is the sin of Haman? What's the sin of Haman? What did Haman do? How do we know that Haman is the personification of evil? So we discussed this a little bit, that Haman is a descendant of Amalek. Amalek is the gematria of Rome, arrogance. Amalek represents arrogance. Amalek is the person who's arrogant. Now, it's more than that. Haman is more than arrogant. What is another name for arrogance? Another name for arrogance is lack of gratitude. That lack of gratitude, why would somebody not be grateful? Because they're arrogant, because they think they have it coming to them. So somebody who thinks that everything that they're entitled to things is a person who's arrogant. And the opposite of arrogance is gratitude. To be grateful to Hashem, to be grateful to the people who help us in our life, to be grateful for what we have. So Haman is the opposite of gratitude. He's arrogance and the opposite of gratitude. How do we know that Haman is the opposite of gratitude? Look at the verse, the chapter, that when Haman goes to talk to his wife, he says to his wife the following. This is in chapter 5 here at Ziv. It's page 1381 in your book. That Haman says the following. Look at verse 11. It's literally the definition of ingratitude. And this is a sin that we have to guard against very much so in our own lives. And that Haman came to his home. And Haman told them about his honor and his wealth, and about his many children. And on all the way the king, that kosher gidlo hamelach, the way the king had elevated him above all the princes in the land. And Haman said that Esther, Queen Esther, has invited him with the king to the party that she made. I'm the only one who she invited. And also tomorrow I'm going to have another party. And now he says, Vikolzeh, all of this. I have the most beautiful family. I am the highest person in the land aside from the king. I'm above every other officer. And Esther only likes me and the king. It's just me and the king. And all this, all this is worthless to me. As long as I see Mordechai sitting in the gate of the king. So what Haman is saying is, instead, and this is the sin that we have in our life, instead of being grateful for what he has, he focuses on the one thing he doesn't have. He has literally every single blessing in his life, except for one. There's one aspect of his life which he's not in control of. What's the one aspect? That Mordechai doesn't bow down to him. And he says, everything I have is worthless. That's the opposite of an attitude of gratitude. The attitude of gratitude says, whatever I do have, I'm grateful for. And the one thing I don't have is worthless. Or the one thing I don't have, I can't control. But instead of focusing on everything to be grateful for, Haman focuses on the one thing he doesn't have. And that's the key. If we want to not be like Haman, we'll be the opposite of Haman. How are we the opposite of Haman? By focusing on what we have to be grateful for and not focusing on what we don't have. And this is, first of all, just a spiritual tool for each of us to do in our lives, that every day we spend a few moments just reciting every morning and every night what we have to be grateful for, with the things in our life that we are so grateful for. And it's going to overwhelm all the things that we're not grateful for. I promise you that. But unfortunately, what happens is the one or two things that we wish we had that's what we fixate on. That's what we focus on. And that's a tragedy. And that's a recipe to spiritual failure. That's a recipe to unhappiness. That's a recipe to a life lived in misery and a life that doesn't help us to connect to God. So instead, we have to appreciate all the blessings we have in life. And the way this is brought out so powerfully is in the 6th chapter. Now, I want to just focus on this for just a moment. It says in the 6th chapter, on that night, on that night, the king couldn't sleep. Now, who is it? Now, we know that the king is a reference to Achashverosh, but we also know that when it says the king in the book of Esther, who else does it refer to? Who else do we view the king as symbolically referring to? To the King of Kings, to Hashem, because the name God is not appear. The name of God does not appear in the Megillah. So the rabbis find hints to it whenever it says HaMelech, and the king says, "Bring Sefer HaZichronot." What's the Sefer HaZichronot? The book of remembrances, and he says, and Rashi says, why does he want to bring this? Why does he want to bring this book? Why does he want to bring this book? So he says, Rashi says that he was wondering in his mind, that the king was wondering, because the king had just saved an assassination attempt. So the king was saying, well, maybe Haman is plotting against me. So he says, well, if Haman was plotting against me, maybe there would be another attempt on my life. Who's going to tell me? And then he says, well, maybe somebody had helped me in the past and I didn't give them anything in return. I didn't express my gratitude. So the book of remembrance is to remember the people who did good things for us, who we have not properly thanked. That's the turning point. This right here is the turning point of the book. When King Ahasuerus says, I need to express gratitude for the people in my life who've done things for me, who I have not thanked. And then when they tell him that Mordechai saved his life, he said, what do we do to this Mordechai? What did we do to this Mordechai to thank him? And the servants of the king said, Lo na'aseh imo davar. We have done nothing to thank him. This is the turning point. The turning point of the book of Esther is when Ahasuerus realizes that he needs to live a life of gratitude and express gratitude. So I guess to me, the message of Purim, the point of the Purim story is that we need to learn to express our gratitude, that salvation in our lives will come through an expression of gratitude to Hashem and a gratitude to the people in our lives who help us and who demonstrate to us what we need to do. So that's the concept. That's the concept. Okay, so this is the first point I wanted to make today. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to address.